Hey, what's going on, guys? So this channel is about trying to make you guys a better programmer or web developer, web designer, whatever it may be. And of course I do tutorials and training, but I occasionally like to do the self-help kind of presentation to address issues that you may or most likely will run into in this industry, whether you work for a company or you're freelancing. So we're going to look at some of the common problems and issues that a programmer deals with from both a technical standpoint and just from a social and life standpoint. And I've made a few similar videos, so you may see some things that are reoccurring, but I think that they're important to address and talk about, even if it's in multiple videos, because I may only talk about that one thing for 3 or 4 minutes in a video. So what we're going to do is look at each problem or issue, and then we're going to talk about some solutions and suggestions that will hopefully help some people out. All right, so first, when you decide to become a developer, whether it's a web developer or any kind of programmer at all, you realize the sheer volume of technology that's out there, and it's completely overwhelming. That feeling never actually completely goes away because new things are always coming out. Even technologies that you've been working with, they're constantly being updated and changed, and you're just always learning. So if you hate learning, in all honesty, my opinion is that this is the wrong field for you, because you're always going to be learning no matter what. However, in the beginning, the stress of this is really bad and it's confusing. You have a boatload of languages to choose from. What language is best for what you want to do? You have to learn programming fundamentals in general, like conditionals and loops, and then learn the specific syntax and best practices for whatever language you're learning. All right, you also have frameworks, databases with query languages, tools like IDEs, terminals with commands, dev tools, workflow practices and version control. Then you have DevOps and deployment, how to maintain and update your code, and the list just goes on. So what are some of the things that you can do to, make this not have you smash your monitor and say screw programming? Well, first of all, you're probably feeling like you have had to start yesterday, and you need to be studying everything under the sun. You need to spend 16 hours a day doing this stuff, getting this stuff in your head. But try not to have that mindset, even though it's probably the first one that you're going to have. What you want to do is just try to calm yourself down, pace yourself, and focus on one thing at a time. Now, you'll probably be learning multiple things at a time. For instance, let's say you're learning the LAMP stack, which is Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. Once you learn the basics of PHP, you'll most likely start working with MySQL alongside of the PHP language, which entails learning SQL or structured query language. Then you might learn a framework like Laravel. So you will be working with multiple technologies at the same time, but try to put most of your focus on one at a time. And what I mean, for example, like, don't start learning MySQL and focusing on that before you even know how to write a for loop in PHP. You want to make sure you get the fundamentals of PHP down first. Focus on that first and then move into MySQL. Don't start learning Laravel before you can even connect to a MySQL database with vanilla PHP. So, focus on the fundamentals of each thing before moving to the next. That's my advice anyways. Otherwise, your brain is just going to explode. Now, once you've learned a stack and you can actually program, learning the next language or the next stack is much easier, and you can take on a little more at once. But if you're just starting out and you're a new developer, then try to just keep your focus on one thing at a time. All right, also try not to stress yourself out and realize that you don't need to know everything. Spend some time figuring out what you want to do and what's required, and then make some decisions based on that, okay? Have a plan and then put some things in a list that you want to learn. All right, one of the best ways to learn is courses and tutorials, especially mine. I'm kidding. Well, kinda, but anyway, tutorials and courses will get you going, but you can't just do tutorials and courses with other people's projects. You need to take what you've learned from those courses and you need to apply it to building your own stuff. Okay, Just going and copying code from a tutorial, it only does so much for you. You have to actually take what you've learned and then use that and to think critically to create your own projects. That's the best advice that I can give on how to learn. So tutorials are very necessary, but it's not all there is to it. Okay, so bugs and issues. No matter what type of programmer you are, this is a huge part of it. This is a huge part of the occupation, and it's also a huge source of frustration. When you're seeing constant error messages and you're spending hours and sometimes even days debugging and testing, refactoring your code over and over, and then sometimes you think everything is perfect and you go to deploy to your server and you get 50 more errors because the application isn't playing nice with the server. Or maybe you even just build your project out on a Mac where you built it on Windows, or you created it on Windows, and it doesn't work. You have to make sure that your app works in all environments, and that can be very stressful. These are all very tough and annoying parts of this profession. So what are some of the things that can help with this? One thing that I see over and over, especially with new programmers, is when they get an error, they don't really try and read and process that error message. Being a course instructor, I see this over and over, and this is one of the reasons why my Q&As and my courses are so backed up, because people get one little error and they flip out and immediately post a thread, and in a lot of cases it's just a word being misspelled. So one of the best ways to learn is to try and figure it out on your own. That's really how the real world works, and that's the best learning experience. Anyone can copy a perfect tutorial and have nothing go wrong, but when you run into issues, that's that real life stuff that you're going to be doing every day at a real job. So you need to really read your error messages, look at the line numbers, see exactly where the piece of code went wrong, search Google, search Stack Overflow, and really dive into trying to fix that error. Also, learn how to test and debug correctly. Things like unit testing, end-to-end testing. This is an area that I really lack in. I hate writing tests, but in the long run, it's going to save you some time and aggravation. And this is actually something that I really plan to get into soon and start making videos on. So, tools like Jest and Mocha, stuff like that. All right, now when you run into issues, try not to freak out. Sometimes you can spend days on one issue, and it's kind of hard to keep it together because you most likely have deadlines. But freaking out, it really doesn't help the situation. Sometimes you just need a break. Stopping for the day, it may seem like a ridiculous thing to do when you're strapped for time, but sometimes when you give your mind time to kind of take a breather and you come back, the solution is as clear as day. And I can't tell you how many times this has happened to me, where I spend hours and hours just trying to fix an issue, find out what's wrong, and I finally just give up out of frustration. And then I come back the next day after my mind is rested, after a good night's sleep or whatever, and the answer is right in front of me. That has happened over and over again. All right, and make sure you utilize sites like Stack Overflow. People are willing to help, and of course, if you work with a team, utilize them as well. There's a good chance that a senior developer can help you in just a few minutes. So again, don't be scared to ask for help. Okay, another issue that we run into is either someone telling us we're doing it wrong, or we just have the feeling we're doing it wrong. And I'm mostly talking about code that actually works. You just may not be doing it in the best way possible. All right, being an instructor, I run into this a lot because I put so much of my work out there in public, and I get both constructive and destructive criticism. Okay, people like to correct other people, especially developers, and I've noticed two types of criticisms, or criticism, I guess. It's criticisms? I don't know. Constructive criticism, we all know what that is. It's when someone sees that you could do something a little different and they politely offer a suggestion to actually help you out. Then you have destructive criticism, and you'll see this a lot on YouTube and other social networks. This usually comes from a programmer that is disrespectful and most likely miserable with their life and their career, and they're rude, and they're basically just trash talking to make themselves look or feel smarter. It really has nothing to do with helping you out, and that is destructive criticism. Constructive is selfless and helpful. Destructive is selfish and pretty much useless. And you will run into both. Fortunately, most people are actually just trying to help you out, and they are giving you constructive criticism. All right. It's hard because a lot of the times there's 100 ways to do the same thing, and everyone thinks their way is the best. It's also hard to keep up to date with the most current standards and syntax because things are constantly changing, especially in JavaScript. I love JavaScript. It's what I use the most, but there's so much that changes so frequently with both the core language and frameworks. It's just really hard to keep up with. A lot of this criticizing can cause low self-esteem and imposter syndrome. Even if it's polite, constructive criticism, you can still kind of take it harshly. I have a video called Self-Doubt in Programming if you're interested in, hearing more about imposter syndrome in this field. So when you do receive constructive criticism, it may be hard, but try not to take offense to it or let it make you feel stupid or like, you should have known this, etc. Let it actually help you become a better programmer. When I first started this and people would suggest something to me that I could have done better, I would get really aggravated and discouraged. But I've learned to now look at those suggestions logically and see if it actually is a better solution, which sometimes it's not. But if it is, and that person is respectful, I'll thank them for it. They helped me become a better programmer, even if it's in a tiny little way. Now, when it comes to disrespectful, self-righteous trolls that are just basically making fun of you and trying to make you feel like you shouldn't even be doing this, just ignore those dipshits. If someone's rude and they're being a prick to you, or to me, I should say, I wouldn't even consider their solution. And I've had quite a few of these people, being on YouTube and so on. YouTube can kind of sometimes be a cesspool for just negativity, and I just block those people. Those aren't people that I even want watching my videos. I know in a real work setting you can't simply block them, but just try to ignore them, stay away from them, and try to stick with the right people. Also, like I said, there's a lot of ways to do the same thing, and just because someone gives you an alternate solution, it doesn't mean that it's quote unquote better. Maybe it's a more modern way, but maybe it's not compatible in most browsers. People tend to think that because it's new, it's better, and that's not always the case. So look at things like, is it compatible with other browsers? Does it give you a performance boost? Does it save on file size? What else? Does it save on code space? Does it make things more readable? If there's no benefit or there's very little benefit, then who cares? Just do it your way. You don't always have to be on the cutting edge, but you should try and stay educated with new standards. And when it comes to imposter syndrome, you will get it. Everyone does at some point. Just don't let it get to you and make your career decisions based on it. Because you will regret it. If you love doing this stuff, then do it. There's always time. There's always room to improve. So another issue is adapting to new workspaces and new developers that you'll be working with. Getting a new job, whether it's your first developer job or your 10th, it's very intimidating, and every company is different with different workflows, different culture. You could have two jobs working with the same exact technologies doing almost the same thing in terms of like what you're building, but their culture, their workflow, and interaction could be something that you don't even recognize. So you have to adapt to the way that they do things, whether you like it or not, really. And that can be a very difficult thing to deal with. Okay, whenever you start a new job, you'll most likely get existing code bases thrown at you, and this can be kind of terrifying. Starting a project from scratch is one thing, but when you get existing code that you don't even know who wrote it thrown in your face, and you're told to add to it or edit it or do anything with it, it can be pretty terrifying. You also can't control who you work with. You could get a team that you love that boosts your confidence and help you become a better developer, or you could get a team that makes you feel like crap and is of no help at all. And being under pressure with deadlines is also very stressful. So what are some things that you can do to kind of help this whole situation out? There's a chance when you start a new job, you may have the urge to turn around and walk right out. I've had these urges before with many jobs, not just development jobs. But just remember, it usually seems worse at first because you're the new guy. You have no clue who anyone is or what you'll be doing, or even if you can do the job at all. But just try to keep in mind that you will adapt and you will learn how the company does things. And don't be ashamed to ask for help. Nobody's going to look down on you if you ask for help, and if they do, then that's just an absolutely horrible team, and maybe you should rethink that particular job. Be aware of your deadlines, but don't let that pressure get to you. Try and relax and don't overwork yourself. A stressed out mind isn't one that is going to think clearly or solve problems or learn things. So try to keep your mind in a calm and just calm and collective place. And you eventually will fit right in, okay? In most cases, I'm not going to say with every single job you'll fit in, but with most cases, you'll learn to adapt and you'll fit in, and you'll have nothing to worry about, and you can move on with your career. All right, so working with clients. The last slide was basically for working with a company and a team. But if you're a freelancer and you have your own company, then chances are you're dealing directly with clients, which is a whole nother can of worms. And it can be very frustrating. I have a lot of experience in this area. Many of them, they don't know what they want, even if they think they do. Most clients that know nothing about programming or web development, they don't understand what actually goes into a project. They don't know the amount of work that it takes, and they'll want the world for $1,000, like literally want a Facebook for $1,000. So some tips on dealing with tough clients, and I'm not saying all clients are bad. Some clients are great, and they're understanding, they're smart, they have knowledge about the industry, and they're great to work with. They're not stingy, but there are some very, very tough people to work with. So you want to establish a very clear agreement on the requirements of the project. That way you both know exactly what you're doing and what they're getting. Okay, ask plenty of questions so that you can get their vision. Also offer suggestions and also some limitations. If there's something you can't do, make sure that you explain that. Don't tell them that you can do something that you're not going to be able to do. All right, explain what goes into the project and establish a reasonable timeline. Don't devalue yourself and your time. Charge what you believe your time is worth. Now, if you're just starting out, like you're brand new and you have no experience that you can show, no portfolio, then you do kind of have to take that into account with your pricing, and you'll probably have to charge less than average in the beginning. I wouldn't say that's devaluing yourself, but you really haven't proven yourself yet. So I mean, it's understandable that someone will want to pay less for someone that has no basically proof of what they can do. All right, and of course, try not to strangle them. That never really works out. It may feel like the right thing to do, but I don't know. I'd suggest not doing that. All right, so time management. This is an issue in all occupations, but I think it applies in development a little more. Utilizing your time, especially if you're a new developer, can be very tough. Also, leaving time for your family and friends and hobbies and other things besides programming, it's really important. You don't want to get burnt out, and if all you do is code, then you will. Being unorganized, not setting goals, that's also a problem. Establishing your priorities and making up for lost time due to bugs, and sometimes, days of trying to fix something. These are all things that they're all issues with time management. So some solutions for this: you want to set clear project goals and I mean long-term and short-term. What's your overall plan for the entire project, but also what are you doing today? What are you doing tomorrow, the next day? Use some kind of software to track your time and your progress. Also adjust your priorities, and not only that, constantly rethink them. For instance, writing perfect code shouldn't be a first priority generally. Get something working and get it up and running. Make sure that you can actually do it, and then refactor it with, not perfect. There's never perfect code, but more efficient code or more readable code. Add in comments, things like that. Just prioritize your project. You may also want to delegate when feasible. So if you're working with a team and you have someone that can help with a certain aspect of that project, then take advantage of that, use that. And then lastly, make time for other things, especially if you have a family and kids. You don't want to be at work all day and then come home and then go right to the office and keep working. Establish clear lines between work and other things. And I've had issues with this in the past. I've worked from home quite a bit, most of my career actually, and it's kind of hard, especially if you work from home, to separate that time because you're technically off the clock, but you walk by your computer and you see you have an email from a client, so you feel like you have to respond to them. At least for me, I felt that way. But you should really establish clear lines and just know that you'll respond to them tomorrow during your work hours. All right, so last slide here, guys. People that aren't programmers, especially people like construction workers and people that do hard labor, they may laugh when we say that this occupation can cause health issues. It's a quote-unquote desk job. But sitting in a chair all day can actually do horrible things to your back, and just a lack of exercise is just very unhealthy. Also, staring at a screen for hours on end is bad for your eyes, and it can cause things like severe headaches. You also have mental health concerns, especially if you're a freelancer and you work alone all day, and that's another thing that I know all about. Not having social interaction is definitely not a healthy thing. So some solutions are to take frequent breaks. This is actually very important. I'd recommend around every hour or so, at the most 2 hours. Take a 5 to 10 minute break, stretch your legs, maybe walk around for a bit. I myself, I like to DJ. I like to spin music, and I have my setup in my office, so I'll take a little break and I'll spin a couple tunes, get my mind in a relaxed place away from coding, and go back to it. And some people like to do things like meditate, which is very healthy as well. I also suggest getting a sit-stand desk if you can afford it. That takes care of your sitting down all day issue. Definitely get exercise at least a couple times a week. I would definitely suggest getting a gym membership if you can. You don't have to go crazy and be some workout freak, but even if you just go and walk on the treadmill a couple times a week and listen to music or even watch tutorials, which I do quite a bit. Also make sure that you eat right and you drink plenty of water. A lot of us programmers, we love our coffee, we love our caffeine, but you can't live on coffee. You do need to hydrate yourself. All right, so I think that's it for now, guys. Like I said, these aren't all of the issues and hardships that come with being a programmer, but I think it's definitely some of the more common ones, and hopefully some of these solutions you'll work into your life and your career, and they'll help at least some of you guys. All right, so thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.